All right. Good afternoon. We want to thank our Housing Council members for joining us today. This is a statutory required under the Ohio Revised Code meeting at least once a year of the Residential Housing Council for the City of Columbus. This is to report out on the status of the inspections that the staff has done this year on the properties that are currently abated under the CRA program, and to provide you with some additional program updates because this is very much an evolving program at this time. I'm Rita Parise. I'm the Housing Administrator with the Department of Development. To my left is our not so new, but new to the Housing Council Program Manager, Jeremy Druitt. He joined us last August. He has really hit the ground running, which is a good thing because we have a lot of work going on. He has worked very hard to prepare for this meeting today. I'm sure that it will be very informational, and as I indicated, we appreciate you being here. So moving along, as I said, the purpose of this meeting is to report out. Technically, the Housing Council itself is supposed to do all the property inspections, but as you can tell with the report that Jeremy has put together, that is close to 2,000 properties, and I don't think you have that much free time in your schedules, and we are very fortunate that inspection time comes at a very good time of year for the Housing Division team because, of course, there is not a lot of construction going on in January and February. So we ask our construction staff to get in their city cars and go take a look at these properties and provide information to us on the ones that are not compliant. So at this point, we'll go ahead and get started. Next up is going to be a report on the CRA status by area. First one up is Bob Jones, and he is with the Economic Development Division, and he'll be reporting on the downtown CRA.
So I'm Bob Jones. I'm Enterprise Zone Manager in the Economic Development Division, and we do all of the abatements and everything for the downtown CRA, and both on the residential side and the commercial side. It's historically sort of flipped back and forth between, even when it was just residential, between Housing Division and Economic Development Division. And when in 2013 we added commercial to the downtown CRA, and then I began really to oversee both sides of the CRA, both residential and commercial. So what in your packet, it's really the second page. It's 2 pages that I've got some information here for you. I just took what I did last year and updated it. It's just sort of a very brief overview of sort of what's going on downtown. Downtown is a pre-1994 CRA. On the map that's included in your packet, it's listed as I think it was a legacy CRA is what it was called. And so either if it's commercial or residential, there's no agreements. Really all that needs to be done, as long as a project is done and it meets the basic requirements in our ordinance and in the Ohio Revised Code, we are to certify the abatement to the Franklin County Auditor. And even through 2020, in 2020 and even in 2021, it was a fairly busy, and I'm always rather surprised when I go back through my data and look at all these things. So the first thing here is just to show that what we do is we usually get contacted, someone has a project they'd like to do. We have a 1-page information sheet which sort of suffices as an application, but there's no requirement for an application for a downtown project. But that gets us ready. We start a file, we get some information, and we send out an eligibility letter that just says, hey, based on what you're saying here in your application, this is basically what it would qualify for. You know, a 10-year abatement or a 12-year abatement or a 15-year abatement, that sort of a thing. And in 2021, I sent out 13 eligibility letters. for new projects that are just coming online downtown. It was a mix between commercial and residential, but most of those were on the residential side. Sometimes we will get a request for an application, and we've never really had contact with them before. There's really no requirement. And there were 8 of those, and I have those listed here, projects, and then those will also be repeated in the next list down below, which is we certified 16 abatement applications to the Franklin County Auditor in 2021. And I have those listed. They're alphabetical. They range from like Parks Edge Place over here on Long Street at Neal Avenue to some rehab residential projects downtown. They sort of span the gamut. Overall, I thought it was interesting. I didn't have it in there, but I wrote this down. It represents over $270 million in investment in real property improvements that were certified in 2021 downtown. So there's a lot of activity that's still going on downtown. And then there was one other that I just always like to include as far as the pre-1994 CRA projects. We have a Stelzer-Steigler CRA up near Easton, which is also pre-94, and we did certify one project there as well in 2021. So if anyone has any questions about the downtown, that's my report.
I do, Bob.
Sure.
If you don't mind. Well, I'm curious, why is Easton area Stelzer-Steigler within the downtown?
Oh, it's not. It's a separate CRA,
Okay.
but it's a pre-1994 CRA, and I just like to include that with the Housing Council because downtown is both residential and commercial. Although I think we probably do more residential projects than commercial downtown. Any other questions? Okay.
One more.
Sure.
270 million in current investment improvement, does that line up? How does that line up with 2020? Or
I didn't look to look what the in 2020. We did either 16 or 17 applications certified in 2020. So even through COVID, we certified a lot of projects downtown. And because, it's not that they were just done that year. Some of these take 2 or 3 years to complete because some of these are fairly substantial projects, be they either new or, renovation. Thank you. Okay. Guess that does it for me.
Thank you, Bob. Hello, as Rita introduced me, I'm Jeremy Druitt, Development Program Manager for the Residential Tax Abatement Program. Thank you for being here. As Rita mentioned, I joined the city back in August to manage this program. It's been a great 6 months, and I'm looking forward to doing more. Your next pages in your packet are going to include a map of every CRA in the city as it was at the end of 2021. We have some new additions that I'll talk about a little bit later, but I wanted to orient you with the full map as we go into the data. If you skip 2 pages ahead, past the far West Broad CRA map, which I'll refer back to later in the presentation, you'll see a sheet titled 2021 CRA Overview. This includes all the data from last year and over the life of the program. Last year, we approved 407 tax abatements between all the CRAs. And if you look deeper, you'll see the three most prolific CRAs were Near East, Southside, and Franklinton, so that you can get a sense of where the demand is and where most of the activity has been. There are almost 2,000 abatements that are still active today, out of the 2,300 or so that have been approved over the life of the program. You also see the value of active abatements. That figure, to be more specific, it's about the investment done into the properties, not necessarily the actual tax liability reduction, not necessarily. Then you can see the typologies, the third from the right, and to reorient, these typologies were created back in 2018 to distinguish between different market trends in different areas. Each of these three categories have different requirements. I'm happy to answer any questions about the data before moving on to discussion of the new CRAs that were created.
Jeremy, if the total investment is not necessarily the total tax abatement, do you have figures on the actual tax abatement or abatements, plural?
It can be collected. It's not readily available. What we have to do is when we certify an abatement, we certify to the county auditor, here's the total investment that occurred on the property as certified by the owner. Here's the backup for that cost. And now it's up to you, county auditor, and your discretion to determine how much of this value is truly abatable. So this data can be potentially collected in hindsight once the abatement is on the tax roll. But it's not something that is automatically scooped into our data.
But the auditor would have that data. I should note the definition of legacy from the code, but either you or Rita could probably define what qualifies an area as legacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll take a stab at that, and then Rita, please back me up if I misinterpret something. But the legacy CRAs were created before 1994, and that's an important distinction because pre-94 CRAs can only have a certain amount of amendments before they are considered to be expired. And so with these particular legacy CRAs that are still outstanding, it's a decision of the city. Do we want to amend these and go towards our maximum amount of amendments and make them expire, or keep them as they are? Rita, is there any other flavors to that I should add?
Yeah, so the term legacy itself is not in the Ohio Revised Code. It is really a nickname that we have picked up as the ones that we are not trying to impose a lot of requirements on because of the fact that once you get through those number of amendments, it loses its pre-94 status. And the advantage to a pre-94 status is, number one, it can do both commercial and residential abatements. Otherwise, your commercial abatements are very restricted and have to get consent of the school district. And number two, the amount of reporting that's done to the state of Ohio for pre-94s is considerably less than post-94s. So from an administrative standpoint on those 2 points, it makes a lot more sense to leave something in the pre-94 category if at all possible.
I'm curious, and Rita, this could be you or Jeremy, if commercial abatements need consent of the school districts, what's the rationale for residential not requiring consent of the school districts or some input?
So we are required to notify the school districts, but the consent is not required. For me to give you the rationale would be for me to try to do a mind mode with the state legislature, and I would just as soon not try to do that.
I don't blame you there. Okay, but notification is given to the school district?
Yes.
Or districts?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thank
All
you.
right, Jeremy, take it away.
Yeah. So if we go back to the map titled Community Reinvestment Areas Residential 2021, I just want to orient you with the CRAs that we added last year, and then one that is quite nearly a truly active CRA. So the 3 that we added last year are numbers 25 through 27. So the Cleveland Avenue CRA, you'll see that in the top right corner adjacent to Easton. It goes right between 161 and Morse Road. You also have the Southeast CRA, which is number 26, and that's that very large CRA in the very bottom right corner. And then finally, Brookwood, which is the small jagged rectangular shape, kind of center right, right next to Livingston and James CRA. These were passed at roughly around the same time last year, and so those are the 3 that we added in 2021.
Is that the project that's going on? Where there's an old church on Livingston?
Yes.
Okay. 26, roughly, where's that area?
That area, it's along, is it Bryce Road?
Yes.
Where the tiny homes?
It's really, the request for the abatement was not tied to the Tiny Home project.
What's going on at 25? What's up there?
25 is Cleveland Avenue, and that is for a National Church Residences senior LIHTC called Breton Woods.
Britain?
Breton, Bretton.
Are there any other questions on the 2021 map? Okay. Moving next, I have a map of the far West Broad CRA. So we started to legislate this one and getting the documentation ready for that one last year. This CRA, as you see it on the paper, is going to support 2 different large affordable housing projects in the far west of the city. That western boundary that you see there that goes through those various parks, that's the very edge of the city of Columbus. This sits just south of Broad Street, outside of 270. What's going to be changing pretty soon, though, is that we're looking to amend the CRA boundary to expand northward to include a 3rd project. So it's envisioned that the CRA will eventually support 3 large affordable housing projects on the west side. And to orient you as to where things are here, a lot of it is vacant land to the west of Galloway Road. That bisects the CRA as you see it on the paper. There is some residential there, but largely it's farmland, which is where one of these projects is going. On the right side of Galloway Road, that right half, you see a lot of residential, existing residential that's not recent new construction. And so the idea is that we'll expand the CRA northward across far West Broad, or across West Broad Street, rather.
We're going to go to the east.
To the east, okay.
Yes. Cherry Blossom is just east of Milton.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
So yeah, that's far east.
Does the Hilltop have its own CRA status?
It does, yeah. So if you refer back to that prior map, that is,
Number 4, yes.
yep, that's number 4.
Hang over there. Not much.
Are there any questions on the Far West Broad CRA?
That is just being added, just?
Yes, we legislated it, what was it, the very end of last year or the beginning of this year? But the amendment to expand it has not gone through yet, but we're making the plans to do that. The intent is, once we get through the current policy update, which is actually going to be my next topic, once that is finished, we would then expand the West Broad CRA. And then one other 2021 change that I neglected to mention is on the agenda. Regarding the Wetland Park CRA, we made a minor amendment to that, not necessarily to the geographic boundary, but it was a clarification as to what occurs if a parcel geographically is not fully within the Wetland Park boundaries. It's the type of amendment that we're doing with all the CRAs as these things come up, to more define explicitly in legislation what happens if you do have a parcel that is right on that line, and you need to make a determination, is it properly within a given CRA or not? Moving on to number 7 of the agenda, triennial review update. So, as you're probably well aware, but for the public's benefit as well, every 3 years, the City of Columbus reviews the residential tax abatement program and the CRAs to determine if the affordability policies as they stand are still valid or to update them, and to also reconsider the typology of each CRA, that market ready, ready for revitalization, or ready for opportunity distinction. We are in the midst of that right now. That process began last year, and there's been a series of public meetings to get the public's input with the upcoming updates. It is roughly anticipated that this will pass around mid this year, but we do not have quite ready for you yet a firm timeline as to when that'll be legislated. The changes that we have discussed to date with the public are making the affordability requirements more stringent on multifamily projects. So the current requirements as they stand presently are for any project with 4 or more units. We would consider that multifamily. And then furthermore, 10% of those units would need to be set aside for those making 80% or lower of area median income, and then an additional 10% set aside for those making 100% or lower of area median income. That's how it is today. What we've discussed with the public in the past with regard to the new policy that we are working on is to change that to one of 2 options. One being 10% at 60% or lower of AMI, and then 10% at 80% or lower of AMI. So reducing each AMI category by 20% each. The other option available would be to set aside 30% of the units to those making 80% or lower of area median income. And there's also been discussion about adding affordability requirements to single-family projects as well. This is all still in flux. We're still consulting with the public, but that is where things stand today.
Would it be possible for us to receive notifications of those public meetings? I know,
Absolutely.
I'm sure I probably, again, could get online and exercise self-help, but it would be great if we knew when those were going to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do know there are plans to have one or have more in the future. They're not scheduled yet, but when they are, I'll send them your way.
I would appreciate that.
Pass notes or minutes from the previous ones?
Yes, and actually, in fact, they ought to be recorded on YouTube for availability. I know at least one is because I consult that one regularly. So I'm happy to send you links for the recordings that are out there.
I'm still trying to understand affordability. What does that mean for individuals when you're saying affordability?
Yeah, so do you mean in terms of the types of folks that could utilize these units or how they access
Well, I
them?
wouldn't say the type of folks, but individuals who might be able to, interested in having 4 walls and a roof. And what does that look like for them moving forward in the city of Columbus as we continue to have millions and millions of dollars of tax abatements and individuals are working 2 or 3 jobs in single bedroom homes or apartments are renting up to $1,000.
Well, actually, to partly answer your question, on the very last page, I have a spreadsheet called 2021 Developer Agreements. What this is, again, for any multifamily project that includes affordability, in addition to the standard application requirements, we require that developer to enter into an agreement with us committing to those affordable units. And so you can see on this last spreadsheet the various agreements that we entered into in 2021. Not every project has gone through the application process quite yet. You can see on the right which have and which have not. But you can see the total units that are benefiting from this program and the affordable units that are being created with this program.
Yeah, I was looking at that. That's what kind of prompted it because, we definitely need to be making things more sustainable.
Definitely.
Sustainable and sustainable, where people can get in and stay in.
Yeah, if you look at that middle, like toward the middle, you'll see two narrow columns, one titled total number at 80%, total number at 100%. And you'll see 196 at 80% or lower and 206 at 100% or lower. And one additional detail here that's interesting to note, to the left of that, you'll see a column called total LIHTC units. A number of these projects, not all of them, but a number of them are LIHTC deals, and so you can consider every unit that creates to be an affordable unit. Even if we're not technically monitoring them, we do know that they are being created.
So once I see zeros, and like the very first one says 36 units, but they're all zeros across, they just haven't got to that point yet?
Well, to address that, if you look a little to the right of those, there's a column called buyout options.
Okay.
What that means is it's part of the legislation for the policy as it stands that you will have, if you're a multifamily project, you're going to have a certain unit requirement for the affordability. You can either provide those units or, as an alternative, there are a number of credit options or a number of buyout options that will allow you to fulfill your requirements to the city but still contribute to affordable housing. So those projects that have 0 at 80% and 0 to 100%, if you look over, you'll see some information on what their buyout was. So some of these projects are instead donating to the Affordable Housing Trust or Homes on the Hill or other community development corporations that are involved in the housing space.
Okay, thank you.
So Deborah, just a couple comments relative to the affordability. And, knowing you for quite a while now, I know that you're somebody who advocates for those who are very poor. And, like we like to call it the 30% AMI group. Those folks are very poor. The reality is that a 30% AMI rent is not enough to cover the operating cost of an apartment. So the goal in working on the residential tax program on a standalone basis without benefit of other city subsidy is really not going to address the 30% units that you so very much want to see happen in our community. And that's simply because it doesn't pencil. The deal won't work if we don't do it with additional subsidy. So the work that we do with our home dollars, with our city bond dollars, is to invest in LIHTC projects and allow some of their units to be at 30% AMI so that those units are available for the very poor, the very economically challenged in our community. Unfortunately, you can't create 200 of them in one fell swoop, but, if we can get 5 units here, 10 units there, and then we typically are doing what we call permanent supportive housing project a year, somewhere in the vicinity of between 50 and 100 units. Those generally are all for people at or below 30% of AMI. The only reason they work is because they get vouchers and or continuum of care dollars. If they didn't have those, they wouldn't work either. So, we are making small strides. We're not going to be, we're not creating thousands of units each year, even though frankly that is where the need is, but we're creating as many as we feasibly can with the resources and driving the affordability.
Two things. I don't consider people poor. Like you said, they're economically challenged.
Okay.
Because a lot of people are
correct.
very, very trying, very, very hard. 60 plus, and I'm working 2 jobs. The other thing is that, and I love you, and Jeremy, I love you too. Please don't take this personally. The city could do more. and they know they could. I mean, we're giving out millions of dollars in tax abatements for people to give us some crumbs, to put people in housing. And there are some people who are not going to be sheltered by choice. There are some individuals who are struggling to be sheltered, and some more that are struggling even harder to remain sheltered. So, we see that in love. That's just my opinion. I sit at the table to be the voice of those individuals who are working 2, 3, 4 jobs, trying to make it be one big job just to afford where they are. And like I said, 1-bedroom apartments are almost $1,000 a month. And I know that's not a whole lot, but when you're barely, trying to feed your kids, you go to the gas pump and you go, what is $3.96? Good Lord.
Yeah, understood.
Rita, what does LIHTC stand for?
Sorry, low-income housing tax credits.
Yeah, that's why I said some of them have zeros. The one has 284. That's not too bad. They got 284 units out of the total. That's good, though. I mean, we're making strides.
We're making strides, yes.
We just keep doing the work, And I know that you are doing the very best that you can with what you have, and I appreciate all the work that you do, you and your team. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thank you.
AMI is defined federally or statewide?
So the particular AMI figure that we use is for the Columbus metro area. We rely on HUD for a number of parts of the program, and we rely on HUD data for this as well.
So that's federal? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the people that don't know nothing about nothing make all the rules. That's okay.
So this was all the information that we had formally part of the agenda. Do you have any other questions or any other discussion you'd like to have? Now, the meat of this meeting, which I'll call to now, page before last, 2021 visual inspections. So as you'll see, there are 21 projects that we identified as having various code violations. Toward the middle, you'll see issue 1, issue 2. These are the issues that our inspectors found with the properties. Although there are 21, if you look, there is some joint ownership amongst these. And if you look at just the owners, there's 11 different owners that have code violations. And so we're bringing this to you for approval to send letters out to these owners, informing them of the code violation and giving them remedies and time to make it right.
Do you ever just communicate directly with some of these folks? A letter would be formalized, I'm sure. Does anybody just give a call?
So that's a fair question, and in looking at this list, excuse me, there's a couple of these that I'm familiar with the ownership entity, and I'm able to reach out. There's a lot of them that I'm not. And so, we have no way of really knowing where they're at or what they're doing. They've got their address on file, and so they will get a letter. So, and then there's one that's not on this list I would at least like to double back very quickly, and that's Colonial Village, because we discussed that with you last year. That property has since been placed into receivership, and the receiver is trying to address the problems on the property and bring it up to code with the idea that once they do that, it will be sold. At this point, as a staff, we're not recommending that we cancel the abatement because we feel that the abatement brings value to the next owner and would provide them with additional cash flow to be able to continue to make improvements that are badly needed on the property. So I can't stand here and tell you that the property's in good shape. It's very well documented that it's not, but by the same token, to take away that significant of an abatement only hurts the folks that are living there ultimately because it deprives them of the cash flow they need to get this property repositioned.
Would agree with that.
What about the one where the owner is deceased?
Excuse me?
It says note owner is deceased. What about that one? Are we?
In those instances, we can work with our city attorney's office and the code enforcement group to see if there is any known activity going on at the property or any individuals that are taking responsibility for it. In some instances, it goes through the estate process and the property is ultimately sold. In some instances, frankly, it ends up going into, a tax foreclosure sale or a code, environmental court process where it can be sold. So we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Okay. So, Jeremy, do you think it's possible to maybe touch base as they're going through this process? Because, you porch peeling paint, it's getting warm now, even though it's the normal, and I see the abatement date was 2018. We've been in a pandemic, but we wasn't in 2018, so, maybe things are be looking up for them or something.
Yeah, so a little more detail too. So we did the inspections back in January. So at least these things were valid, at least as recently as January, but definitely I'll keep you up to date once we send these letters out and these things are remedied, definitely.
About the contact, the first 8 of them that's owned by the same company, and it's like they're all right in there together, and it's all the same thing.
Yeah, and I'm actually familiar with that individual, and I will be having a conversation hopefully by tomorrow.
Yeah, you just think a nice handyman could take care of that for you, right?
Yes.
Get you off the list.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Just getting the information about the public meetings upcoming would be great.
Yeah, no, definitely. Tomorrow I'll send you links with the meetings that have been recorded and are public, and then I'll be sure to let you know when future ones are scheduled.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I believe that concludes our meeting. Thank you very much for your attention, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Thank you.
What suggestions do either of you have for getting more commission members to attend these meetings?
Not having them at 4 o'clock.
Well, Deborah, we've tried the middle of the day. That one doesn't work either.
It doesn't work either, but yeah, I don't know. And so, did Tiffany not want to come back, or Tiffany White?
I don't think she got reappointed.
How did she get reappointed? Can we petition so we can, no, at least she came to the meetings with us.
Yes, understood. You're welcome to submit, ask her to submit a bio, and we can elevate it, but.
Yeah, at least we'd have 3 people, right? Because me and her sometimes rode together even. Well, Jeremy, welcome. Thank you for all the work that you've done. I do miss the opportunity to do inspections and going out, so maybe that could be another thing when your staff is, I don't know, y'all probably can't ride us in city cars, okay?
We're not supposed to take on city staff members in city cars.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I think when we did it before, we followed y'all or we met y'all at the places, but no, I would like to sometimes, I don't know about yourself, but we've been on some of the inspections sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we were certifying the far West Broad CRA, I went out to do the blight study, which is one of the requirements under the state to get a CRA certified. It was very interesting to see it on the ground, how the area is currently, and then seeing where the new projects are going to go. It was a good experience to just be out there and see what it's like.
You think you might be interested, Amanda?
I'm initially more interested in the public meetings with regard to redefining affordability.
Definitely that, yeah.
That would be higher on my individual list.
Oh, mine also, yeah. Because they've already did these, so you don't do them but once a year, right?
Well, if you've got an interest, Deborah, we could, take a look at what the calendar looks like. Jeremy's probably going to be getting these letters out this week. See how quickly we get responses. I wouldn't mind setting up a time to do a follow-up inspection on some of these, which would give you a chance to see what's going on. And
Okay.
get acquainted with some of the neighborhoods.
Okay. Well, yeah, definitely send it out, and maybe just
Sure.
inform you. If you can make it, you can. If you can't, then,
Information is good.
yeah, I mean, we can kind of see it, Because, I mean, we haven't done one in a long time. It's really great to see what's going on. It's so exciting what's happening in our city right now.
Those, of course, represent the least amount of the tax-abated dollars. But they're most important for the individuals who need the housing, but they represent the least amount.
Well, we went on one years ago, and when we did the tour and inspection, we made a couple suggestions, and the property owner, there was a senior building, and I remember we didn't think about that. They was doing a laundry room, and there was nowhere for the people to fold their clothes when they took them out to dryer, and they hadn't even thought about that, and they said, yeah, we'll look into that. So, I mean, sometimes it just makes you feel a little good that, hey, the seniors can now fold their clothes up out the dryer and not have them all wrinkled up.
Thank you, Rita and Jeremy.
Yes, and I'll look for the YouTube video and the link, and we'll go from there. They'll be writing notes.
They've authorized you to
Gotcha.
send the
Okay.
letters.
No, I was just asking her a procedural question.
No, you're fine. I'm just messing with you. That's what the teachers go, y'all writing notes? Let me see what read in front of the whole class, and you're embarrassed.
Yeah, thank you. It was nice to meet you both.
Thank you so much. It's nice to meet you, and so sorry so much. Till